With me today on behalf of Deviniti is Michał Emanowicz, who is currently in the role of VP of our vertical solutions, and Anand Unadkat, who is a solution architect at Atlassian with more than a dozen years of experience in consulting. And Anand is with us today to share Atlassian's perspective on the concept on solutions and reinforce the narrative that we have put together for you today. In terms of who we are as Deviniti, I'm sure that a lot of you are familiar with our brand, but just to kind of throw some numbers at you, we have been in this ecosystem for nearly 20 years. We have quite an impressive average yearly growth of 35%. We are both a marketplace partner as well as a solution partner, which I hope is additional testimonial of how much we understand the solution partner business. And we cannot wait to share with you today what we have learned in our capacity when it comes to building solutions with solution partners. So I think we are good to begin. And just to start off with a brief background of where we are right now. In our conversations with solution partners as a marketplace partner, we time and time again encounter the perspective that Atlassian solution partners continue to be perceived by customers as technical implementation specialists. And there's little expectation on the customer's side that solution partners can actually be able to provide a process expertise, which we know is there, and we have come across it over and over again. And we want to step away from this situation and move towards a more of a consulting setup in the collaboration with solution partners who specifically work with our apps. And before we tell you more about how we are going about this, what we have learned in this journey, and this is what Michał will be sharing with you today, I have a quick question that I would like to start off with. So right next to the chat button and the questions button in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, you should be seeing polls icon, which should be displaying, hopefully you're seeing the list of questions which we'd like to throw towards you, because we would like to ask you how do you think your customers perceive you currently? Does this perception reflect what is written on the screen in terms of what we have gathered? Are you a technical specialist team who can implement anything? Do your customers think that you are a process expert who solve business problems? Or is it a little bit of both depending on the project? Or are you still working it out? And it would be great if you could submit your vote so that we can have a look at the setup that we are currently experiencing at this webinar today. So feel free to submit your vote. And as soon as you're ready, I think we can move on to the next section of the presentation. So let me just give you another 5 seconds if you're still figuring out where you stand in terms of the customer perception of your team. And I believe everyone who wanted to had already shared the opportunity to share their perception of the team. And Michał, let me hand over the mic to you.
Thank you very much, Magda. So yes, so what Magda said was very much correct. And we also asked ourselves this question: where are we now as solution partners, and how our customers perceive us today? And this is the solution partner being the technical implementation specialist that knows the Atlassian tool stack in and out and can implement anything, any list of requirements, is indeed a right perception. But we also asked ourselves the question, is it the perception that is satisfactory for us? And are we satisfied with the way that customers look at us today and where we are in the conversation? So the adjacent question to that obviously was, if this is not satisfying for us, and if we feel that we are a bit far away from the customer and their needs and their pain points, we asked ourselves the question, where do we want to be as those solution partners in the years to come? So we looked at the market perspective and different insights, and what we arrived at is that it's far better and beneficial for us as a company, and also as Deviniti, but also for the customers themselves, is when we are much closer with them, we understand the business challenges, and we position ourselves as a solution specialist or process expert. We have the expertise on the process. We can proactively spot inefficiencies within that process and really be an equal party in the conversation with the customer. So we are more positioned as a problem solver, and the customers see us as this somebody, this entity that is not only going to implement whatever they think that there should be in Jira or JSM or other Atlassian products, but also they will guide them through the business challenge that they have and can actually tailor the solution that yields real measurable business outcomes. Now, when we go back to being a technical specialist, there are a few drawbacks that are connected to this motion. And all of those revolve mainly around, as I mentioned before, the distance between us as a partner and also the customer. Because at this point, when we are invited at this later stage to the conversation, when the customer has already done the work on actually defining the problem, looking for a solution, and seeing how that should look like within Atlassian, it's really hard for us to give them any advice, since they only come up to us with the predefined list of requirements and some technical scopes for us to implement, which we can do pretty well. However, this often results in those one-time implementations, one-time deals, which in the long run result in much lower customer lifetime value. And to support this, we also took a look at what the market is telling us today at the broad market perspective. And what we saw is that the companies that are more focused on the top-down approach, they're more sales-led, they're closer to the customer, they know the people within the organization, they invest their time and resources to actually build those relationships with customers. They enjoy a much more stable and right now higher growth rate than the companies who rely on the customers doing the due diligence themselves. So identifying a need, seeing what are the tools available, installing those tools, maybe doing some pilot implementations, so on and so forth. So there's there's much more work on the customer side. And this is not where the C-levels and the directors are currently at. Now, when we look at the other side of the spectrum, when we are a solution expert or someone who can provide an expertise in the process, we can enjoy all the different benefits coming from simply us being closer with our customers, with the people that are going to be using our solutions, so on and so forth. Because then we enter the conversation on a much earlier stage, when the customer is still figuring out what is the problem. They have some KPIs, maybe that came from the leadership, and they need to solve those KPIs, reach those KPIs and solve the problems associated with them. And the conversation with the partner, with the solution partner, with the solution expert can bring them many, many more different solution routes or some improvements to the process. So they have an equal party that they can talk to actually solve their business needs. And the solution, although it's a crucial part of the conversation and of the whole engagement, can go and is introduced at a much later stage, where we only then employing our expertise in terms of tools, how Atlassian works, how to configure stuff, and then we can do part of the job as well. But it's important for us to move a bit earlier in the conversation with the customer. And when we stretch it to the long run, these tend to be more long-term engagements when we have this kind of motion that is close to the customer, and that yields also higher customer lifetime value. And if we look at how those C-levels, directors or leaders within the enterprise organizations see their vendors, see their partners, we can see that it very well corresponds to what we just talked about on the slide before. So this is just a quote from a CAO at one of the global airlines. And the thing that they as a company want to see with the vendors, with the interactions with vendors, so on and so forth, is the people who understand the needs of the customer. So instead of vendors saying, okay, I can do it for you, no worries, whatever you say, I can implement that. It is better perceived by those C-level executives when the vendor or the partner is actually willing to understand and identify with the business, see what the pain points currently are, what are the stakeholders, what are the tools that are used today, how can we improve the day-to-day work of those employees, of those customers, of those people, so on and so forth. And this yields a better result, and these are the current customer expectations within the market. Now, so the next question, seeing all of that shift, we ask ourselves how to make that transition. What do we do to actually move from being perceived as this technical specialist to someone that is willing and able to advise on the process, to consult on the spot inefficiencies, consult on those inefficiencies, and really tailor really good solutions that solve those problems. We're going to be diving much deeper into those in a second, but the two main important things coming from this section is, first of all, we need to build an expertise within a process and create an offering that is attractive for those business stakeholders. So not only for the technical people, for the admins, for the IT contributors, but for those that are going to be concerned about the efficiency of their teams, and also are going to be using these solutions. And the second thing is building the relationship with the customers that we have today to expand our footprint and reach those business stakeholders, because we all start on this lower level where we have those first interactions with IT people or with admins, and we need to somehow build on those relationships to get to those business stakeholders and be able to solve bigger problems for them. And now let me give the mic to Anand that will give us a more Atlassian focused perspective on how it approaches the solutions today, and also how they see the changing interactions with the customers when dealing with more business-focused personas. So take it away, Anand.
Thank you. So when we talk about solutions, we need to start thinking about it from a system of work perspective. And this is something I hope you've seen this already, because it's not something new we're announcing. It's been there for a while. So for those who have not seen this already, we introduce a system of work, which is a philosophy of how tech-driven organizations should work. This is connecting technology and business teams to achieve a much greater impact. So this actually comes from having over 20 years of experience working with customers and really understanding how they use our technology. So it's a lot of research that's gone into it, because we've had access to, fortunately, understand how the organizations are working using our products. So what are the key principles when it comes to system of work? First, teams must ensure that all work is directly connected to shared organizational goals. How many times have you seen customers not aligning their strategy goals with the teams? It's very common, and this, not having this can have a negative effect. So when you are aligned to the organizational shared goals, this provides clarity on priorities and ensures everyone is working on the right things. Then teams should collaboratively plan on track their work. So this really emphasizes the cross-team collaboration and also the shared understanding of plans, and in return, you're getting transparency in the execution as well. But teams also need to document and share and also build institutional knowledge. And this comes with having that vast collaboration across the team. And that shared knowledge really helps teams repeat success and avoid any sort of mistakes happened in the past to be repeated in the future. So when all of the teams within an organization do this in a consistently manner, we believe that it will lead to a much faster time to value and also a very engaged team and higher return on investment as well. So to implement this system of work, what you need to see is how do we bring those teams together? So what we've done is we've built a portfolio of products. So this is probably not news to you. This portfolio of products is something I think you're probably aware of already. So what we've done is we've designed global apps like Atlassian Home, Analytics, and Admin Hub to serve as a central hub across the entire platform. For teams, we have foundational products like Jira, Confluence, Loom, and now Rovo that every knowledge worker should have. And for more specialized teams, we have products for software, IT, and leadership teams as well. Now, depending on your particular needs, we've got Guard for added security requirements, and also Trello, which is designed for personal productivity as well. So what is in it for you? What's that opportunity that you have as an Atlassian partner? So this is where we turn our focus to solutions. So starting with what we mean by solutions, the term solution I know can sometimes cause confusion because it can differ to or mean many different things, and it can feel like a buzzword sometimes. But when we talk about solutions, we're referring to Atlassian's unique take on products, practices, and services that empower customers to achieve key business outcomes. These products, practices, and services are building blocks of what a solid solution looks like. So their synergy lays the groundwork for customers to grow and expand their business. And this is where you as a partner can start thinking about it as the different solutions that you can bring and really solve specific customer problems that you identify. But remember, not all parts of the business value or implement these components in the same way. So the stakeholders that you do engage with in the sales process will require many level of detail and storytelling to fully grasp the value of Atlassian solutions. So when we talk about solutions and system of work, the advantage of doing so is quite immense because we are moving away from speaking about products and features to actual solutions, real big organizational problems that encompasses multiple products coming together with the practice and services to help your customers. So this is where you are solving the unique use cases with the power of the Atlassian platform by incorporating your services. We're also moving away from speaking about value for specific teams to value for business. And that's a very powerful message because you're targeting the entire organization in the specific teams. And this is where you can uplift the conversation that you're having with your customers. And remember, we want to up-level the conversations, moving away from just talking to admins at the technical level, but talking to execs in a solution level. So to help steer you through this and effectively communicate the value of every layer of the customer business, we've developed 4 levels of narrative for each solution. So going back to the Atlassian portfolio that you saw in the earlier slides, I wanted to highlight the solution areas that each of these sections represents. So looking at all teams, you have Teamwork Foundation, and this is the integrated suite of applications that is designed to enhance collaboration and productivity within organizations. And for more specialized teams, we have dedicated solution areas such as enterprise strategic planning. For leadership, we have world-class software development for the software teams. We have high velocity service management for IT teams, but it's not just for IT. It's for the business teams who provide service management within an organization. So within each of these solution areas, you will see the solutions that we have built within those solution themes, so you can get started with your solution journey and you can accelerate that. When you think about a solution, you will see that it fits in one of the solution areas and themes. So starting with world-class software development, you will see solutions like Build the Right Thing. You've got Developer Experience Platform. With the high velocity service management, you've got service management for developers, modern IT or modern business support, and so on and so forth. And these are solutions that are designed for you to fast track and really understand and grasp the problems at an organizational level that your customers are having. So to end my talk track on solutions, I wanted to leave you with how you can get started with your solutions using a very simple method. Start with using the set of artifacts that I've already mentioned in my previous slides, because this is designed to help sellers and delivery teams get through end-to-end journey with your customer. So you discover a challenge that the business is looking to solve. Importantly, identify where your strengths are in relation to the use cases and the industries you really have some strengths in, as this will help you fast track that solution journey. So it's important that you understand your strengths as well as the actual problems that your customers are facing. Diagnose that challenge, right? So tailor a solution for that challenge, build your IP on top of that. And this is with the marketplace apps or third-party tools to really complete the solution. So this is your unique take on how you solve those solutions and business problems, and you go to market with that. And finally, you package that with all the services that come with implementing the solution as well. So when you've done this, and once you've implemented it, you can easily learn from that. You can adopt your solution for the future, realize the value, and hopefully loop back into the journey, and you use that as a learning for building new solutions for your customers. So let's see how Deviniti is going through that journey today, and I'm pretty sure you will learn that from Michał in the slides coming forward. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Anand. Right, so going back to our experiences and our examples, and also looking at both market perspective, also the Atlassian strategy that they've been undertaking over the past months and years to actually bring us together closer to the customer and to the customer's need. We had to do something about this. So we sat down internally at Deviniti and asked ourselves, okay, what should we do and what can we do to actually fit to those customer expectations, to those C-level expectations, to those changing markets, so on and so forth. So after many different talks, we arrived at 2 strategy pillars that are currently being executed in parallel. And we will dive deeper into each of those in a second. So first of all is obviously building the expertise around a process. So not only knowing the technicalities of how the Atlassian tools work and what they can do and how to configure them, but also learn more about the use cases that they tackle and the processes and the business challenges that we can solve with them. And this is what we do with addressing an opportunity in procurement. So we will be diving deeper into that in a second. And the second pillar is more about building relationships with our existing customers, across our existing base of customers, to finally reach those business stakeholders with whom we can then talk about the solutions we created and really implement those solutions end to end. So these 2 strategy pillars really, I would say, complementary to each other, and we could not, I would say, achieve anything meaningful if we were doing only one thing or another. Now, I will make a pause here and give over to Mark to ask you a question before we dive into the ins and outs of procurement and how we came through that journey, where we are in that journey right now. But that will be in a second. Right now, we will have one more question before we start.
Thank you so much, Michał. Thank you also, Anand, for setting the stage. I believe that both of you are currently today on the knowledge sharing mission, whereas myself, I am on the knowledge gathering mission. And on that note, let me invite our kind viewers for another poll. Once again, if you find the polls button at the bottom of your screen and click on it, you will see a question which we would like to ask you, your dear audience. Where are you currently on your solution building journey? Over the course of our discovery mission in this realm, which I believe Michał will be telling you more about in a moment, we have definitely discovered that it's not a straight journey from point A to B, it's more of a winding road. So it would be interesting to hear whether you're just exploring ideas currently and defining the problem. Are you researching? Are you perhaps already actively building something and testing a prototype? We would love to hear more about that. Or are you scaling and optimizing in a solution that you already have put in place and has been gaining maturity for the past months or years? We would love to hear from you. So let me just give you a few more seconds to decide where you are at and take a peek at the results. I see that the votes are still coming in. And I believe perhaps maybe there would even be sort of a difference of opinion within your teams if we were to ask more than one person, which is also interesting because, as I said, we believe it's more of a winding road than a straight journey from point A to B. I think it's fair to say that it's quite complicated. Right. So since you have come here today to listen to us rather than to be interviewed by me, let me get back to our speakers. Thank you for everyone who is taking part in our poll. And Michał, I believe, once again, over to you.
Yes, thank you very much, Magda. So if we're going back to the slides and the first strategy pillar that we touched on a second ago, is we're going to tell you a little bit more about our own example at Deviniti on how we created a solution and how we are still creating a solution for the procurement department, how we arrived at the procurement space in particular. Also, we're going to be sharing some lessons learned around building expertise and also how we created the POC, and also what are the next steps for us in terms of taking that solution further and also taking it basically to the next level when it comes to value proposition. Now, so when we first decided that as Deviniti that we want to build a solution, we had a few different areas in mind. So we explored a lot before we actually arrived at procurement. And we, for example, considered to do something in finance. However, the finance space as a whole was simply too big for us to be a first-time solution. There was a lot of complexity, and that complexity was growing rapidly. So as we know, we have many different sub-processes, sub-departments in finance, and this is a more umbrella term than an end-to-end space. So we had to leave that for now, and it was branching out in many different directions. But what was actually curious for us and what stood out to us in the procurement space was a few things actually. So the first one was that we were already receiving some inquiries from our customers that were outside of the Atlassian ecosystem. So they were more the customers for our custom development department, apps development department, where we do custom solutions for the customers. However, that for us was a signal that these customers were looking for a solution in procurement today. So there probably are some unresolved pain points, urgent enough that the company wants to approach us and say that we want to build something custom for us, because there aren't any other tools that are really filling all of our needs. So that was a first good signal. The second one was that we already had a few customers with very simple rudimentary procurement implementations in Atlassian. So these weren't, I would say, very sophisticated or savvy. However, it was a very good symptom for us that Atlassian could be actually a good place to do this. I mean, build a procurement solution around. So we had all the right signals coming from the customers and also some of the other conversations. However, we quickly realized that we did not have, and that was the last thing that we did not have, is the expertise within a procurement space. So in-house as Deviniti, we didn't know a lot about the procurement at all. So we didn't know what tools were used, what the processes look like, who's involved in those processes. Also, what are the pain points today, what tools are used, so on and so forth. So we had to somehow bridge that gap, that knowledge gap, before we were doing anything else. So we just weren't feeling confident enough to start building and start developing a solution around the space that we do not have a full understanding of. So that's exactly what we did. That was our initial goal, to know as much as there is to know about the procurement space. So as I mentioned before, the processes, stakeholders, tools, so on and so forth. So since we didn't have that knowledge in-house, and it was hard for us to actually gather that from any other customer, we used an outside consultant that would guide us and navigate us through the entire procurement space. And this was a consultant, an expert that was completely outside the Atlassian ecosystem as a whole. Then he obviously has some perspective on the tools. However, he wasn't coming from the Atlassian itself, so he had a very fresh perspective on what it is that the customers need right now. And he had over 10 years of experience in consulting and implementing procurement processes across enterprise customers. So that was really important for us that we extract this knowledge and really move forward with the solution. So we spent around 20 plus hours on different sessions, workshops, and meetings, so that we could extract all of this knowledge and be able to get an understanding on what the procurement is today. Now, so this is one of the many screens that we have from our documentation that we created across our different sessions and workshops. And it's not meant to be readable, so don't worry about this. However, its purpose is to show that we really dug deep into the space, into the procurement, and also the processes that are happening within this area. So this might look like just a normal flow. However, we mapped out all the different roles that are involved in the process, all the approval flows, the roles that are involved with those approval flows. We also know which kind of information needs to be gathered at each stage of the process. We have color-coded stages, so we know what stages are executed within certain tools, what stages are executed manually or over email, so on and so forth. So the more details we learned, the bigger the opportunity actually became, and we were more confident in actually extracting those pain points and talking about those pain points to other people. So it really was a mind opener in a way. So it was really important for us that we had that nailed down. Now, and in terms of the pain points or our findings, some more details about how the procurement is doing today. We've got things like wrong assignments that cause delayed orders. We have a lot of mission critical tasks that executed manually, and if we scale that up to thousands of orders per year, that really starts to impede the entire process and cause a lot of pain. We also have poor vendor management. So a lot of the information currently lives inside the procurement specialist's head. And it's hard, really, if that person leaves the company, then it causes all kinds of disruptions within the organization. We've got lots of legacy tools, so on and so forth. So there's a lot to be done within the procurement space itself today. And seeing those pain points, we really wanted to draft an early value proposition of how we would see Atlassian fit into this narrative, fit into everything that we learned about procurement and about the tools and what the pain points are currently lived by all the employees working in those departments. And we really focused on business outcomes. So we want Atlassian to not only be a tool for tracking, but also to mitigate the risk of those delayed deliveries or paying subpar prices for goods, and also introducing the real significant time savings for procurement specialists, as well as people that are requesting things to buy. So where we are at the stage where we knew what pain points we are trying to solve and what is the role of Atlassian in this entire picture, we needed to create something that we could take to the customer and show them that it is valuable actually to consider that solution a viable option for an enterprise organization. So we really focused on solving as many of those pain points as possible using only native Atlassian tools as well as the marketplace apps. So we really didn't want to leave the Atlassian ecosystem, the Atlassian bubble, because that makes the solution easier to vet and assess the risk, and also it's easier to push through the different hoops on the customer side within an organization to approve that kind of solution. So we wanted to keep the tool stack lean, and also we are waiting as of now with developing any kind of third-party connectors or really connecting outside the Atlassian ecosystem until we have some pilot implementations lined up and we know what those connectors are. So we don't want to be guessing really in that space. We very much focused on showing the value instead of doing something that is full on production ready. That also regards new developments. So we are heavily leaning into the low or no code solutions because, as I said, the important thing is right now to show that it solves the pain points and not that it is actually ready right now to deploy to production. Now, in a few examples from that POC that we've created, as you can see, we use the native Atlassian functionalities. We also use some marketplace apps. On the left, you can see the screen from a vendor management module where we can see the card of the vendor with the scoring, the hardware that is available from them to procure, also the tax information, so on and so forth. On the right side, we can see basically an operating system for the procurement specialists, something that they do not have right now with the tools that they have today, which gives them an overview of what are the requests for quotations, active purchase requisitions, purchase orders to create, and many, many more. So this is what it looks like right now. Obviously, the whole POC is much bigger. However, we wanted to show you a little bit of what it looks like actually at this stage. Now, when it comes to actually creating a solution, looking back at the journey, there was a lot of things that we learned. There was a lot of times where we failed at something and we had to reiterate some of our approaches. And first of all, it was really important for us to select a use case that is easy to contain. And by that, I mean, it's not complex enough, such as, for example, finance, and it's also end-to-end, and it happens in high volume within the organization. That makes it urgent for the organization, and it's easier for us to actually construct a solid value proposition around. Then we obviously want to be as confident as possible that we solve the right thing, and for this, we need to know in real details how the space is currently working, how the processes are currently handled, the tools, the actors, the approvals, the thresholds for the approvals. So we really want to have a deep understanding of how everything works, how one piece of paper exchanges hands between one specialist to another, so that we can talk the language of the customer, and the customer sees that we have some expertise ready to share, and therefore the customer is more willing to actually enter into a conversation with us. And the last thing, and I would say we consider ourselves a bit lucky with the procurement solution here, is because it is also important to have, regardless of the solution that we're creating, it's important to have a customer base that is lined up and willing to iterate with us. Now, we have a lot of different interactions with the customers today revolving around the procurement specialists. We do vendor vettings, risk assessments, and I'm sure you also have those kind of experiences and interactions. So we have some kind of base to start with and iterate solution with. Now, and also one huge lesson that we took from this journey, or up to a point of this journey, is that the pain point can be really as good as we define it. So generic pain points that are expressed in one sentence are definitely not enough to build solutions around. So there's many more different points that go into a well-defined pain point or a bottleneck or any pain of that sort. So there's a variety of different questions that we need to answer. What happens exactly? What roles are involved? So on and so forth, to really know the details about a pain point. And only that allows us to actually solve that pain point. The other perspective is obviously business impact and the size. So even if we have the best defined pain point in the world, if it only relates to 10 tickets a month or something that happens 10 times a month, it's not really worth our attention. We want to chase things that are really high volume, so something like 2,000 tickets a month, and that is much more important for us, right? And therefore, it is much more important for the customer. Now, there is a second strategy, as I promised, that we'll be diving into. But before that, I will make one last pause before everything to hand it over to Magda, and we'll ask you one last question in the pause.
Thank you, Michał. As Michał said, I promise this will be the last question that I'll be throwing at you guys this evening. But there was a bit of sharing on our side with regard to the mistakes that we've made, some streets that we wandered into that we had to back out of. And so on that note, I'm very curious about your experience in this regard. So let me direct your attention to one last poll. And here we would like to hear from you about the biggest roadblocks that you have experienced, if you have already come across any on your solution building journey. And out of the ideas that we were thinking that maybe the biggest roadblocks are there, we were thinking about perhaps issues with area expertise, as Michał mentioned. With regard to procurement, we needed to rely on an outside expert because we found ourselves not equipped with enough knowledge in this regard. Is it, in your case, pinpointing real customer problems and stepping away from those generic definitions and finding something genuine? Is it finding a way to prove your idea works with a proof of concept? That can also be very challenging. And when getting ready for this webinar, we were making sure that we would actually be sharing with you what it is physically that our solution is becoming. Is it a PDF? Is it a Miro board? Or is it something that's tangible and can be tested out by those who would like to have a look at what we're doing? And last but not least, is getting access to the right people within an organization. There is a lot of talk about reaching C-levels at the moment in the ecosystem. I don't believe we're all quite there, but it's a challenge that we certainly need to overcome. So I'm wondering whether this is perhaps the most significant roadblock that you are seeing. And let me just take a peek at the results. I see still votes coming in. So thank you for all of those who have participated. And let me just give a few more seconds to those who are still thinking about the best answer that defines their situation. But then again, we are getting close to the end of our time since we have decided to devote an hour for this topic today. So let me not keep you waiting anymore. Thank you for participating in our last poll today. And Michał, over to you once again.
Thanks very much. Right, so going back to the topic and also the question that we had a second ago. So we are currently at the stage, we are in the process of building a solution. Right now, this is a procurement solution. However, in the future, in the months and years to come, we will be adding many more solutions that we created for our customers. And it is really important for us to be able to execute on those solutions. By execute, I mean iterate, get feedback, and ultimately implement those solutions and sell those solutions across our customer base. So in order to do that, we need to be able to speak to the right people. We need to be able to reach the business stakeholders. And this is obviously a process. However, we started to ask ourselves this question: what can we do to actually get those customers and get to those, get to those business personas, business stakeholders, someone who is responsible for the efficiency of their teams, so on and so forth. So it didn't take us long to realize that we have currently a very robust customer base that we've accumulated across our multi-year presence in the marketplace. And these customers range from all the different sizes. However, there's a lot of enterprise customers also there as well. And these customers are primarily using our apps for the ITSM and ESM purposes. So that's when we decided that we want to harness all the interactions that we have with those customers. And these were all low-level interactions, with technical people, and try to build out from them and dig ourselves out of those low-level, I would say, admin conversations to someone that is, for example, responsible for the entire team and responsible for the efficiency of that team, for the experience of that team, so on and so forth. And what you see on the screen is exactly that. This is our example of one of the customers that came to us for an app demo. This is a very common interaction that all of us marketplace vendors have at some point, where the Jira admin, and this was a very technical person on the other side of the call. So the Jira admin approached us with a problem around the forms, the customer forms on the JSM portal. So the forms were pretty clunky, they were very long, it was hard to navigate through them. And this was the question that she had. So how can I use the app to actually solve this, so on and so forth. So what we could have done is we could have just showed a very generic demo of the app, and also maybe throw in some documentation on top of that and say, okay, here we go. I hope that helps. Let us know if you need anything, and really keep our fingers crossed that that they are going to buy the product. So what we did instead is we started to ask those open-ended discovery questions to really understand the problem space and really get to the real problem that she wanted to solve. So we obviously know that the customer forms and the customer portal, this is the initial part of the process, initial stage of the ticket lifecycle. So we asked, okay, so in that case, what is your entire ticketing experience look like? Okay, so what happens after the ticket is submitted? And we very quickly arrived at another need, a bigger problem, another problem that wasn't mentioned to us before, not in the ticket, and also not in the introduction during the call. And it turned out that our customer also needed to create some resolution tasks for the ticket. These were very, I would say, standardized tasks. They were repetitive, and they took a lot of time to manually create. So luckily, we had a solution for that to save that time. So we created a POC of the solution that solves both the first problem, the initial problem that the customer approached us with, and also the second one that we discovered during our conversation. And the most important thing about this, that it was a bigger POC, a bigger solution that was initially agreed to, and that solution needed the approval from the service team manager. So the person that is actually responsible for this entire experience and is the key stakeholder in that arrangement. So we scheduled a follow-up meeting with the manager. Obviously, the solution was delivering the impact of reducing the checkboxes and also improving the experience of creating the tasks. But the most important thing that we got out of this is that we went from the Jira admin level to a business persona, so to the service team manager. And when we actually got on a call with them, it was an entirely new, more nuanced picture. So we started talking about the problem and what would be the best solution for that problem. We were also getting some insights about what are the leadership's expectations, so the leadership people that task the manager with achieving the better experience in JSM. So it was a really fruitful conversation that gave us a lot to think about, and also created a roadmap for us of the next things that we will be trying to solve for that customer. So right now we are at the stage where we need to get a manager's approval for the solution, but the important thing is that we are in contact with that manager and finally implement the solution. Also, as I said, that doesn't stop there. Right now we opened up a relationship with somebody that is more business focused, and that allows us to analyze and talk to them on a more regular basis how they use the products, also see into our own analytics tools to spot new symptoms and proactively suggest them to the manager and solve them in order to achieve a better experience both on the customer portal as well as JSM itself. So these are a few different questions that we ask. The most important thing is that these are more the what and how questions instead of the yes or no questions. And it is really important to ask those because it encourages the other person to really speak more broadly, to speak about her day-to-day, her or his day-to-day, to describe the environment in a more detailed way. And also it paints us a picture where we can spot more dependencies, more problems, and more different nuances that we could have before when we didn't have this entire perspective. And that also applies to the scale of the problem. We want to be able to narrow that down. And really, that was just one interaction with the customer, one of many that we have as a marketplace vendor. And there are many more different interactions that are very common across the solution partners, also the marketplace partners, that we can use today to really elevate our conversation and dig ourselves up from those initial low-level conversations, low-level abstraction levels to actually go to the business stakeholders. And we've got things like vendor vetting with the risk assessment. We've got technical pre-sales, which is a great opportunity to actually ask the question about the problem that the customer wants to solve instead of discussing the implementation scope from the get-go. And also the support requests that we all get from our customers. These are albeit much smaller requests. However, these are also a great opportunity to solve that one problem and position ourselves as the problem solver, and instead of just a technical specialist or someone who handles the maintenance of the implementation or maintenance of the marketplace product. Now, when it comes to business stakeholders, and this actually reminds me of one more case that we have from our customer. There was the other case. This time, we were transitioning from the Jira admin level to the marketing team manager. So previously we had service team manager. Now we were more marketing focused. So this was a much less technical field. And what struck me during the call was that there was little to no talk about the tools. We were only talking about the experience of her team, how that team handled things today, and also what are the bottlenecks within that process and who's interested in that process and how to make it better in the end. So we weren't talking about the Atlassian tools necessarily. Obviously, that was in the later part of the conversation, but this part was more dedicated for the technical contributors that we also had on the call. But when talking with that marketing manager, it really, at that point, it dawned on me in a way that they really do not want to see any kind of configuration or technical jargons or to really talk about the tools. They really want to see productivity gains, and the more quantified they are, the better. So if we can measure the before and after, that also goes a long way. And the more complete solutions for that manager, if we could, I would say, take two birds with one stone, that was a better deal for her. And that made her more encouraged to actually talk to us and see where we could arrive with the solution. So if it's a really important pitfall to avoid when talking with those business stakeholders, that whenever we are too technical or we cannot explain our value proposition using their day-to-day context, they will eventually drop out. Or really what can happen is that they can revert us back to the technical person, and that could obviously, in their perception, help us more. However, it's not helping us more because we want to solve the business challenges and not only configure and implement tools and features within those tools. Now, in terms of the next steps that we as Deviniti are also undertaking when it comes to solution is that we have obviously a few accounts where we are building those relationships, and we want to use those well-developed accounts to actually jump from one solution to another. So there are many more different fields adjacent to the ITSM or ESM space, but are not particularly connected to service management. But there's a lot of opportunity there, and we believe that it will be much faster actually going from one solution to another when we have a well-developed account compared to when we did not have any kind of relationship prior to our engagement whatsoever. So with that said, I want to leave you all with a summary and a few action points. So the things that we can do starting tomorrow to actually bring us closer to the customers. And the first one is absolutely examining past interactions with customers. So any RFPs or support tickets, these are a great places to start, because then we can see, okay, how are we handling those customer conversations right now? What are the questions that we are asking, and also what are the questions that we should be asking and we aren't currently? And that way we lose a lot of the use cases and we lose a lot of the context of the customer. The second thing is try to narrow down the areas where you have the most expertise in. And so we obviously do a lot of implementations, and we like more certain processes more than certain others. However, it's important to know where we're actually able to map out the entire flow, see what are the most common pain points in this area or in this process, so on and so forth. So it is a good exercise to do on our side with our consultants, also people responsible for the implementations, and it could give us a good starting point for a future solutions to build. And now the last thing is during pre-sales, it's actually one of the easiest to start with, and that is that during pre-sales, it's important to spare a few minutes before actually diving into the implementation scope and ask those more broad discovery questions around what is the business challenge that the customer tries to solve right now or is currently trying to solve, and what are the pain points that they are experiencing right now, who's involved in that, whose KPIs are involved in this conversation. And it may very well change whatever implementation scope you're discussing later on during the call. So it doesn't have to be a lot of questions. However, it's really important to start out the call from that perspective instead of diving into the implementation and saying, how are we going to do this one particular form or implement this custom field on this view. So with all that said, thank you very much for staying up until the end. And right now we will be ready and to answer some questions for you.
Thank you, Michał. Also, thank you, Anand. I believe we're just 2 minutes over time, so I guess there's not that much space for the Q&A as we have expected primarily. But I do see, no, hang on, that was a false alarm. I don't see any questions coming in so far, so I guess we've given you a lot of food for thought. But we do hope to hear from you after the webinar. We do realize that the case we're making is not a simple one, which is exactly why we are hosting this webinar today, because we want to solve this equation in collaboration with solution partners and look for the ultimate solution together. So I guess at the moment, the best we could do is just thank you for your attention. We hope to hear from you in the upcoming days. You will definitely hear from us. As I mentioned, we will be following up with the recording and some unique content that we would like to share with you, contributing to the case we're making today. And that's it from our side. It was a pleasure to host you. Michał, Anand, thank you for taking the time, and see you around in the ecosystem. Let's work on arriving at a solution together.
Thank you all.